Addictions are becoming increasingly common, and it's not just about drugs or alcohol. Addictions are everywhere. It seems like we need constant stimulation every single second of the day. It has reached the point where we can't even sit down to eat without turning on a video for background. Excessively indulging in these addictions can pull us into a life we don't want, turning us into drug addicts, alcoholics, pornography addicts, or even people who spend all their time moderating online communities. By avoiding these destructive habits, we can steer clear of a dark and unhappy path. On the other hand, we can become more productive, confident, ambitious, and ultimately happier and more satisfied with our lives. We've all tried to quit these addictions on our own, but often we return to day one again and again. It's a constant uphill struggle. But don't worry, by the end of this text, you'll have all the tools to finally get your life in order and break free from these habits. But before we move on to what to do, it's important to understand how addiction works in our brains. How does addiction work? Addiction forms in our brain's reward system. When we do something pleasurable, eat chocolate, play games, have sex, drink alcohol, or use mild drugs, dopamine levels rise. This creates feelings of happiness and pleasure. But, as the wise say, everything in life is temporary. What rises always falls. The same applies to dopamine. After a peak, dopamine always drops. That's how our brain works. But it doesn't just return to normal. Everything has a price, and dopamine levels fall below the baseline. When dopamine is below normal, we feel unpleasant states, fatigue, distraction, lack of motivation, hopelessness. It feels like wanting to lie in bed all day and do nothing. Our brain doesn't want to stay in this state of discomfort, so it looks for quick ways to raise dopamine. But remember, when you get too much instant pleasure, you fall again, experiencing even more pain. And the cycle repeats. Endless roller coaster highs and lows. The higher and faster the dopamine spike, the deeper and faster the crash. Addictive habits and substances, like cocaine, sex, video games, or pornography, cause a rapid dopamine spike. Excessive indulgence leads to an even stronger crash, causing more pain and discomfort. That's why these things are so destructive. Quick dopamine spikes train the brain to crave instant gratification, making it harder over time to enjoy activities that provide slow but steady rewards. For example, reading produces a slow dopamine rise compared to the sharp spikes from video games, which is why a game addict finds it difficult to sit down with a book. Why is it so hard to quit? If you're addicted to games or another habit, someone might simply tell you, stop doing it. But the problem is that addiction has become a huge part of your life. You can't just get rid of it. So, how do you quit an addiction? Step 1. Admit the problem. Develop self-awareness and acknowledge that you have an addiction that's becoming a problem. Some people say, I play games to relax and socialize with friends, but in reality, they spend 8 hours a day shouting into a microphone, destroying their mental health because of a bad team. Playing games isn't inherently bad. It's better than buying drugs from strangers in an alley. The problem arises when you can't control yourself, and the game starts controlling you. Step 2. Find a healthy alternative. I spent days stuck to a chair, destroying my dopamine receptors and mental health with games. But one day I realized this had become a problem. Nothing was happening in my life. My body looked exhausted. I hadn't gone outside for weeks, and I wasn't satisfied with how I was living. I decided to change and started training seriously. Over time, I noticed I played less. I spent more time in the gym, and I simply didn't have time for games. I also watched fitness videos, which took even more time away from gaming. The pleasure from working out became my new source of dopamine. I felt good after training and was happy with my progress. Instead of abruptly quitting a bad habit, find a healthy alternative that gradually increases dopamine. This could be reading, yoga, drawing, or just spending time with friends. Step 3. Find a new passion. Simply replacing the addiction with something else may not be enough. Sometimes the addiction is so strong that reading or exercise alone can't displace it. I still sometimes play games, despite good habits like regular training and reading. But everything changed when I started creating content. I set goals for myself and became obsessed with achieving them. I constantly thought about my project, and I simply didn't have time for games. They stopped being interesting. Find something you can be obsessed with, a goal, a new hobby, or interest. When you have a passion, your mind is constantly occupied, leaving no space for thoughts about addiction. But remember, there will be moments when the urge to return to the old habit is strong. Good advice: don't fight the thought, don't resist it. For example, when I wanted to play, I didn't repeat to myself, don't play, don't play. That only strengthens the urge. Instead, think of something pleasant, like a childhood memory of your parents pushing you on a swing and making you laugh. When the urge arises, switch to a happy thought that brings joy. Step 4. Work on your mental health. There are days when your mood is terrible and you feel depressed. In these moments, we seek instant pleasure to mask negative feelings. Often, we turn to addictions to cope with these feelings or escape them. Bad mood is usually connected to poor mental health. If our mental health were in order, we wouldn't feel so bad and seek pleasure to cope. To improve mental health, try meditation. Be grateful for small things, connect with people, stay physically active, be kind to others, and most importantly, avoid destructive habits. Step 5. Change your identity. Sometimes, despite good habits, I still return to bad ones, like watching adult content. I realize that my addiction persisted even after I quit gaming. How did I break free? I noticed that when I liked a girl and wanted a relationship, the desire to watch that content disappeared. I became a new person. I couldn't imagine that the girl I liked would want to be with someone addicted to these habits. So I changed my identity to the person I believed she wanted me to be. This made me fully give up the old habit because I no longer wanted to be that person. Changing self-perception and identity is a powerful tool. People act according to who they believe they are. If you see yourself as addicted to games or pornography, you will continue being that person. But if you see yourself as someone in control, you won't even think about returning to the addiction because that person doesn't have that problem. Imagine your ideal version of yourself and strive to be it every day. Step 6. Forgive yourself for relapses. There will be days when you slip, and that's normal. Life is full of ups and downs. When you relapse, it may feel like you're back at day one, but a relapse doesn't mean you start over. Don't be too harsh on yourself. Negative emotions can bring you back to bad habits as a coping mechanism. Forgive yourself for the slip and focus on your progress. For example, if you're struggling with alcoholism and have been sober for a week but drank one night, acknowledge the achievement of that week of sobriety and set a new goal: 2 weeks without alcohol. This way, you're always moving forward. I went from 8 hours of gaming a day, daily harmful habits, and constant bad mood to feeling good and proud of my progress. Breaking free from addictions is a non-linear process, full of trial and error. There will be failures, but only you decide if you want to improve your life. By following these steps, I'm confident quitting habits will become easier and you can live a happier, fuller life.